episode 13, Lucky 13, which means we're going to bust this out right now. 13 books for episode 13, and then we are basically exactly caught up for the rest of the year so far. So we're going to go fast and furious, and there's some random stuff. There's some, okay, we're just going to go. First one, J.D. Robb, Big Jack. J.D. Robb, also known as Nora Roberts. This is her other series that's not like romance stuff about a detective lieutenant in the future, and really cool. I really love this stuff. I haven't read one in a really long time, but just pick them up. They're fun. They're easy reads. They're quick. So do that. And then the next one is a John Grisham. I don't have an actual copy of it, called The Reckoning. And like I've said with all of his other ones, like the stories are just good. Like you get a mix of like lawyer stuff, you get some mystery, you get like relationships, like everything. But really like that. Anyone pick it up and you'll enjoy it. The next one, which was really cool, like I ended up listening to it versus reading it, even though I had a copy just because it was easier at the time, and called Woman of God by James Patterson. And I didn't know what in the world this book was going to be about, but I started listening to it right before I left for my Italy trip. So I think I finished this like 3 or 4 days before. So it was super cool to be reading it because it kicks off straight in Rome, which is exactly where I was going to be going first, having no idea about Rome. And I was like, oh, I can kind of check out some of this stuff that she's talking about, or get a little lay of the land of what it was like getting off the train and in the airport and stuff in Rome, in this crazy huge city. So, but it was really cool. It's about like a new pope and a new leader, and how there might be a woman for the first time. Very interesting, regardless of what your religious choices are. But I really enjoyed that, especially if you've been to Rome. It's kind of cool to read. So then next up, followed up by that, I probably have a copy somewhere, but I don't have one on hand. I reread or re-listened to Angels and Demons. Sorry, I have this itch. Angels and Demons by Dan Brown, after I got back from Italy. And so it was really cool to read it after the fact and like read about all these places that I had never been before when I read it the first time, but now I have, because it takes place in Rome with the new pope being brought in. And so it was really cool. So if you've read any of his stuff, any of that series, the Da Vinci Code series, you kind of get the gist. But another one of those, like if you like Rome, been there or whatever, then you might really enjoy that. Followed that up with another audiobook of James Patterson called Juror Number 3, which was really cool story about kind of like jury selection in a couple murder trials, and how the significance of this juror number 3 and the person that ended up in that spot. And it was kind of fun. It was like had a couple stories mixed in with one. So that made it really cool. The next one is wasn't a library book, so I don't have it. By Mark Manson. He is his second book, called Everything Is Fucked, and I'm sorry for my language, but he did the Subtle Art of Not Giving one, and that was a good book too. But this one was really good. This was more about like hope, but not really having hope, and what hope really is in for real. Like not just believing in stuff, but you can't just say, oh, I hope for this or I hope for that, because we all have to do something. So really, really enjoyed that book. If you like him, he's very just like no nonsense, straightforward. Like I'm going to tell it to you how I think it is. And if you don't like it, then just stop reading my book. So if you got that mindset and you're open to it, he cusses a lot. Oh well. But it was a great read. I sped through that one while flying. And then I turned around and I followed that up with a book called Eager to Love by Richard Rohr, who is a Christian author. I don't know his full background. A lot of people have highly recommended his stuff. This is the first one. Maybe this is the second one I've read of his. But I picked this up because Eager to Love is about St. Francis of Assisi, and I wanted to learn more about him as I was going to Assisi in Italy. And so it was really cool. And it was basically like St. Francis's motto, mission, everything, his passion was just love, loving everybody, loving your neighbor, loving, and spreading that. And so it was really, really cool to read and really, really like eye-opening and just made me want to spread love to everybody. So my form of spreading love to you right now is by telling you about these books that I want you to read because they're amazing. So then followed up with a couple of those with a big, huge book. This is kind of cheating because I started this book maybe 2 years ago, and then I finally finished it. Which all of you guys, I'm sure a lot of people have read this or seen the show. It's not a small book. It is 625 pages, so it's big. Not as big as War and Peace, but it still took me a really long time to read it because it is one of those books you do not carry around with you in your pocket like this little one from the last episode. You know, teeny tiny, weighs nothing. This, huge book. Like, you're going to get back pain by carrying this around. So it ended up that I was just reading it while I was sitting at home, and that's why it took me so long. But along the way, I started watching the first season, and started to get more into it, having people to, like, compare it to and reference and stuff. But when I finished it, I really enjoyed it. So there are high odds I might read more, but I might listen to them because I think that would intrigue me, like it'd keep me entertained in it, and I don't have to carry a huge book around. So Outlander, whether you read it or watch the show, it's still really entertaining. So highly recommend it. Okay, so now these are some of my most favorite I've read recently, and I've just been dying because they also are due back at the library, and so if I don't want late fees, I gotta show them to you now. The first one, Tomorrow I'll Be Brave. These are kids' books. They count. I don't care what anybody says. By Jessica, however you say this. Don't know. I can't remember where I heard about this, but after posting something on Instagram about this book and how awesome it was, I've heard a lot of people say that it's like one of their new favorites, and they share it with everybody and their kids. It is literally just, I mean, I want my own copy to read like every single night before I go to bed as a bedtime story because it is so motivating. It is so inspiring. And I'm glad that there are people out there writing books like this for kids that are easy for them to understand, but just know that anything that they can do is possible and that they can be strong, they can be brave, they can have dreams, they can like be creative. Like it's just so visually stunning, and the message is just so simple and straightforward, like everything we all need. And she has another one coming out soon, which I can't remember what it's called. Tomorrow I'll Be something. And I think it comes out in September. So we'll circle back on that. But Tomorrow I'll Be Brave. And then I followed that one up with If the S in Moose Comes Loose, which is by Peter Herman, who I'm checking this out because I'm a huge Law & Order SVU fan, and Mariska Hargitay's husband wrote this book. And it sounded interesting, and it worked out perfectly because I had both of these books when my nieces were in town a couple weeks ago, and so we got to read them and have fun. But it's just very much like, you know, it literally is if the moose loses his S and he has to find another one. So he goes on this journey trying to find letters to figure out how to put his moose back together, which is basically you know, like a story of friendship, but also problem solving. So very cool, fun book. So if you're into that kind of thing. And then what did I read? Then, geez, amazing. Love Big. I just read this one, just finished it like 4 days ago. And I read it in like 2 hours, really fast. It's all about revolutionary relationships. It's part of a book club that I just joined, that a friend of mine actually knows the author. And it is just, it's about, you know, finding yourself, finding your heart, loving yourself, and just loving everything in general, loving people, loving God. It has some religion to it, but it's not about that. Like, and she makes that very clear that you don't have to believe what she believes, and she's not there to like make you believe her beliefs. It's just about finding like those relationships in your life, friendships, romantic relationships, your family, or whatever, that just are big love, and how that just changes your life when you have these relationships that just speak to you all the time. I wanted to cry a few times in this book. Very good. If you need a little love, you just need to pick this up. And then after that, another Rome book. This episode we should just title 13 Books About Rome, it feels like. 4 Seasons in Rome by local author Anthony Doerr, I think is how I was told is his last name. Now, I've never physically actually met him, but he's like on my bucket list of authors that I want to meet one of these days. But really cool. I just happened upon this. It's his journey, nonfiction, of a whole entire year spent in Rome trying to write a book, which was really cool. So if you like Rome, if you like him, if you just like stories and adventures, this has a lot of it in there, but loved this book. He did an amazing job. And it's not very long, so you can easily pick it up and like say, I'm just going to read about spring tonight. I'm going to read about summer. But yeah, really cool on that one. And then last book of the episode, 13, lucky number 13, I just finished listening to 2 days ago, yesterday, I don't know, called Becoming by Michelle Obama. And I listened to that, really awesome. I had been on a waiting list for a really long time, and then it finally had arrived on my phone, and I sped through it really, really fast. It is like her story, but I got so much more insight on like being a first lady, or like the expectations you have or the assumptions that you make when it comes to that, like just out the window. Like nothing you think, at least for me, in what they did in the White House and how they lived and the struggles that you might have like going into that, totally like had no idea. But I really enjoyed it. She was very like cool to like listen to as she read her story. Talks about beginning of her life to the end of the presidency for Barack Obama, and like whether you like him or not, whether you're Democrat, Republican, whatever you believe, like that, it was just a great book about becoming who you are and like persevering through whatever life throws your way. So episode 13, done in 13-ish minutes. That's pretty cool. So that's it for now. See you on episode 14. Bye.